Welcome brothers, I'm JK, founder and head coach at pornography.com, and today I'm going to be answering a question that I often receive and which you may have often had, which is, does it count if I have spent 6 months or 3 months or however amount of time off pornography before I seriously start rebooting, or before I start rebooting for real, or before I join some program or the other? I believe what you're getting at when you ask this question is that you put in a lot of work when it comes to rebooting. You spent a lot of time and energy, and it just feels like so much work to have to start over. That's where the belief comes from, and it goes back to this belief of streaks. When you are serious about ending an out-of-control behavior, it really doesn't matter how long it's going to take for you to get to freedom. It really doesn't, because if the pain that you've been experiencing from medicating all sorts of issues in your life has already started to affect your life in a negative way, and you are watching this video or you are seeking help, then you definitely are at a point where you don't want to live with it anymore. So be willing to pay the price. The truth is that there's no way to actually find out, because you're the only one who knows. Unless you get some sort of brain scan, you're not really going to be able to know how your brain has rewired. The only way you can do it is if you are actually measuring your progress using certain milestones. So for instance, in the Porn Reboot program, we have certain milestones which you can use to measure your progress, where you can find out where you are in the rebooting process. But there are 5 things that matter if you're one of those guys who's really worried about the time you've put in and whether it's going to count. And also there are some brothers who are worried about slipping for a couple of weeks during their reboot. So let's say you're rebooting and then you've been doing so well, but then you slipped a couple of times for 2 weeks, but you never let it become a full-blown relapse. So there wasn't any real serious binging. Maybe you just edged a couple of times, and now you're concerned and you're asking, well, has all the work gone away? Here are the 5 things that matter. The first thing that matters is the lessons that you learn during that process. See, all of us have conclusions and assumptions and beliefs that cause us to slip. It may be a belief like, I'm not getting enough sex, and since I'm not getting enough sex and I have a high sex drive, well, I need to release by watching pornography. Another belief could be that I'm stressed, and whenever I watch pornography, it releases my stress. So challenging these beliefs and coming through it and realizing like, oh, there were other ways that I could have relieved my stress is one of the lessons that you can learn. So that's the first thing, the lessons that you learn. The second thing are the irrational behaviors and ideas that you identify. So irrational behaviors and thoughts would be thoughts like, I need to find out if my PIED, which is my porn-induced erectile dysfunction, is ever gonna go away. And you just start freaking out about it. You're like, oh my God, this girl is coming over, or my wife wants to have sex, and I'm worried that my penis is not going to work because of my porn addiction. Maybe I should just, stimulate it a little bit because I haven't been feeling anything for weeks. You get irrational about it, and then you end up watching pornography or masturbating to test your penis, and you end up slipping. So what caused this was an irrational thought. And when you challenge this irrational thought several times, you then see it for what it is. And next time it comes up, you're able to handle it in a rational way. The third thing that matters are the boundaries that you set. When you set a strong boundary and you cross it when you slip, you have a choice. You can learn from the boundary, or you don't learn from the boundary. It is important to identify after a slip why you cross that boundary, how you can strengthen that boundary, and if there's some other alternative to the boundary. In some cases, maybe you need accountability and a boundary. An example could be, you could be the guy who slips whenever your Apple TV remote is around. And the accountability that you could add to that, in addition to being away from the Apple TV, is to just tell your wife to hide the remote or keep the remote away from you. Or tell her to keep you accountable anytime she sees you on a specific device There's some guys who tell their partner to keep them accountable, since a lot of people are working at home during this COVID-19 situation, to keep them accountable when they close their office door. So it's like, hey, I'm going to be on a Zoom call. The Zoom call is going to last an hour. So if you see my office door closed for more than an hour and you don't hear me talking and interacting with people, then check on me. That's an example of accountability. But what matters during that time period is that you set strong boundaries and you don't break them again. A tip that might work for you would be actually writing down your boundaries and maybe putting them up on the fridge or putting them up on the mirror in your bathroom so that you're always reminded of your boundaries. The fourth thing that matters is self-awareness. Now, many of us, when we get taken over by our addict and we start acting out, you know how it is when you feel that you're possessed and there's this entity that's making you do all these crazy things and watch all this crazy sort of pornography. Well, when you are in the reboot process, there's a certain level of self-awareness that you gain. And that level of self-awareness only goes down when you consciously choose to bring it down. When you go through a slip, you always learn lessons through that. Let's say prior to your slip, you knew it was coming and you decided that you were going to journal or you were going to use one of the porn reboot coping strategies. And so you did, but you still ended up slipping. That doesn't matter because there's still a lesson to be learned. The problem is, you may not go back to that journal or to that coping strategy to understand why you slipped despite using it. In the Porn Reboot program, we teach men to go back and identify and become self-aware of whatever the resistance was that they were facing. Now, that resistance is something else. Now, that entire process of understanding what happened is self-awareness. And it's important that you implement it regardless of whether you slip or not. And the final thing that matters is self-confidence. Now, I've spoken about this on another video, but self-confidence is how you feel about what you do and feeling good about it, right? And you're in the process of rebooting. Rebooting is a skill. And just as with any skill that you learn, you're going to screw up sometimes. You're going to suck at it. Then you're going to think that you're a badass and you're killing it. Then you're going to fail and then realize, oh my goodness, there's still a lot more that I have to learn. And understanding that this is a skill set and having that mindset of, you know what, I'm building up the skill of rebooting, which is going to help me in multiple areas of my life. That builds up your self-confidence. So believe it or not, actually experiencing slips can build your self-confidence. I've shared the story of how I went for up to 16 months without porn and masturbation and ended up having this huge slip and relapse which lasted for a couple of months. Now, I beat myself up about it for a very long time, but once I started again and got back on the wagon or got back on the horse, whatever you want to call it, as I moved forward, I had so much self-confidence. Why? Because I wasn't counting. I was very aware and cutting off irrational thoughts when they began. I was learning lessons from what I was doing. I was positive about it. I wasn't beating myself up over slips anymore. And all these were things that I had accumulated from a past of slipping. And that's how I built my self-confidence in this area. So brothers, I hope that makes sense. And I hope that answers the question of, well, what happens to all that time that I spent slipping or relapsing before I started rebooting seriously? Or what happens when I slip for a couple of weeks during my reboots? I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Now, whenever you're ready, there are a few ways I can help you. The first way that I can help you is to download a copy of my free ebook. It's called Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men. And it's the blueprints to ending your out-of-control behavior. The second way is to join our free Facebook group. Now, it's a group where you can get yourself an accountability partner, where you can be in a community of serious men who are striving to end their out-of-control behavior. And the final way is if you are at a point where you are tired of struggling with this alone and you want to work with a mentor, somebody who has been there before, or if you're the sort of person who needs a system. You've been trying different things, but you don't feel like you've put it together in a clean step-by-step way that is predictable, then you might be a good fit for our group coaching program. and you can schedule a call with one of my team members to find out if you're a good fit for our program. There's also a link to do that in the description below this video. Make sure you subscribe to our video if you found it helpful, and also share it with 3 men who you feel might benefit from it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you later in the week.